Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about maintaining strength and health, the very first place we need to look at is the problem itself. And that problem is not hidden in some complicated formula or advanced medical discovery. It's right in front of us, in our daily choices, in the foods that dominate our kitchens and dining tables. Sugar and refined carbohydrates are quietly shaping the way our bodies function, and the reality is that most people underestimate their impact. They don't just provide energy, they change the way our hormones work, the way our cells store fat, and even how quickly our bodies age. To understand why a sugar and carb-free diet matters, we must first see clearly how deeply the problem is rooted in our everyday lives. Consider this: the average person consumes far more sugar than the body is designed to handle. It shows up in obvious places like desserts, sodas, and packaged snacks, but it also hides in foods we think of as harmless: bread, cereals, sauces, even so-called healthy granola bars. The problem isn't simply that these foods add extra calories. The real danger lies in the way sugar and refined carbs are metabolized. When we eat them, they're broken down rapidly into glucose, which spikes blood sugar levels. In response, the body releases insulin to shuttle that glucose into cells. This constant flood of sugar and insulin sets off a chain reaction that goes far beyond just energy management. Over time, repeated spikes lead to a condition known as insulin resistance. Think of it as the body's cells becoming deaf to insulin's signal. The pancreas, trying to compensate, produces more and more insulin, but eventually the system begins to break down. This is the path toward type 2 diabetes, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. But even before those conditions are diagnosed, there are subtle signs that sugar and carbs are stealing health. Mid-afternoon energy crashes, difficulty focusing, stubborn weight gain around the waist, and a gradual decline in muscle quality. What many people don't realize is that this isn't just about body fat or blood sugar readings. It's about how sugar accelerates aging at the cellular level. High sugar intake promotes inflammation, damages blood vessels, and creates advanced glycation end products, compounds that stiffen tissues and impair their function. That means your muscles recover more slowly, your joints feel stiffer, your energy dips, and your risk for heart disease and cognitive decline rises. In other words, sugar and refined carbs are not only about how you look in the mirror. They directly determine how well you move, think, and perform every single day. Another overlooked aspect is how these foods change our relationship with hunger and satiety. Because refined carbs are digested so quickly, they cause rapid rises and falls in blood sugar. The spike brings a temporary feeling of energy, but the crash leaves you hungry again, often craving more of the very foods that caused the problem in the first place. This is not a matter of weak willpower, it's a biological response. The cycle of craving and crashing makes it nearly impossible to maintain steady energy levels, and over time it erodes both discipline and health. If we step back and look at human history, our ancestors didn't have access to refined sugar or processed carbohydrates. Their diets were built around whole foods, animal protein, fibrous vegetables, nuts, seeds, and occasional fruits. Their energy systems adapted to scarcity, not abundance. Today, the abundance of sugar-rich foods has put us in a situation that our biology is simply not equipped to handle. What was once rare and occasional has become constant and excessive, and the body pays the price. So, when we begin discussing a sugar and carb-free diet, it isn't about following a trend or cutting out pleasures for no reason. It's about recognizing that these foods are the root cause of so many modern health challenges. They rob us of stable energy, weaken our metabolism, accelerate aging, and set the stage for chronic disease. The first key to maintaining strength and health is understanding that the real threat is not lack of exercise or even total calories. It's the invisible, daily damage caused by sugar and refined carbs. Only by seeing this clearly can we start to make choices that truly support long-term vitality. When we think about strength, energy, and health, the conversation almost always circles back to one critical hormone, insulin. It is the master regulator of energy balance in the body. Without insulin, we would not be able to move glucose from the bloodstream into our cells, and without that, we couldn't fuel our muscles or our brain. The issue is not insulin itself, it's how a high sugar, high carb diet forces insulin to work overtime until the system begins to malfunction. This is where the danger lies, and this is why reducing sugar and carbs has such a powerful effect on maintaining long-term strength and health. Here's what actually happens. Every time we consume sugar or refined carbs, whether it's a bowl of cereal, a slice of white bread, or a can of soda, those foods break down quickly into glucose. Blood sugar rises rapidly, and insulin is released to bring it back down by pushing glucose into cells. If this happened occasionally, the system would manage it just fine. But in today's world, with people eating carb-heavy meals and snacks multiple times a day, the insulin response is triggered over and over again. Instead of allowing the body to use stored fat for energy between meals, we stay locked in a cycle of constant glucose burning. The body's cells eventually begin to resist insulin's signals. Think of it like someone knocking on a door so frequently and so loudly that eventually you stop paying attention. This is insulin resistance. The pancreas, desperate to get the job done, produces even more insulin, which creates chronically high insulin levels in the bloodstream. Over time, this state becomes damaging. Instead of energy flowing smoothly, the system starts to break down. Fat storage increases, particularly around the abdomen. Energy crashes become more common because blood sugar fluctuates wildly. And most importantly, muscle tissue suffers. Muscle is one of the body's most insulin-sensitive tissues. When insulin resistance develops, muscles don't get the glucose they need effectively. Instead of being used to fuel performance or maintain strength, that energy is more likely to be stored as fat. The long-term result is a double blow. Muscle preservation declines and fat accumulation increases. This is one of the central reasons why so many people over the age of 40 notice that they lose muscle more easily while simultaneously gaining belly fat. Even if they haven't dramatically changed their habits, it's not simply aging, it's the effect of years of carb-driven insulin overload, but the consequences go beyond body composition. High insulin levels also block the body's ability to burn stored fat for fuel. In a healthy metabolic state, when food intake is low, the body should easily switch to fat burning to maintain steady energy. But with chronically high insulin, that switch gets locked. You become dependent on a constant supply of carbs to prevent energy crashes. This is why many people feel shaky, irritable, or fatigued if they skip a meal. It's not because their body is weak, it's because their metabolism has been hijacked by insulin dependency. Another overlooked effect of insulin dysregulation is its impact on recovery and inflammation. High insulin levels promote a pro-inflammatory environment, which slows down muscle repair, increases joint pain, and accelerates the aging of blood vessels. Over time, this doesn't just affect how strong you feel at the gym. It influences how well you recover from stress, how clearly you think, and even how resilient your immune system is. When sugar and carbs are reduced, insulin levels normalize. The cells regain sensitivity, which allows for a healthier energy balance. Muscles once again become effective at taking in glucose when needed, but the body also regains its flexibility to switch into fat-burning mode. This metabolic flexibility is key to maintaining strength and endurance. It means you can go longer without eating, tap into fat reserves without losing energy, and preserve muscle mass even as you age. It's the opposite of the fragile state that constant carb intake creates. In essence, a diet low in sugar and refined carbs restores the natural rhythm of insulin and energy. Instead of being a hormone that works against you, insulin returns to being the powerful tool it was designed to be, regulating energy efficiently, supporting muscle health, and maintaining balance. And when that balance is restored, strength doesn't just become easier to maintain. It becomes sustainable for decades to come. Strength and longevity are often spoken of as separate goals, one belonging to the fitness world, the other to the medical or wellness space. But in reality, they are deeply connected, and sugar and refined carbohydrates are the common thread that weakens both. To maintain strength into older age, we must look at the role of nutrition not just in fueling muscles for today, but in preserving their function for the decades ahead. A sugar and carb-free diet becomes one of the most effective tools for protecting this link between muscle and long-term health. One of the key reasons is mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells, generating energy in the form of ATP. When the diet is dominated by sugar and refined carbs, mitochondria are forced to handle constant surges of glucose. This overwhelms their natural balance, leading to inefficiency and the overproduction of free radicals. Over time, the oxidative stress damages not only the mitochondria themselves, but also the tissues that rely on them, including muscle fibers. Damaged mitochondria are less effective at producing energy, which translates into weaker muscles, slower recovery, and reduced endurance. By contrast, when we reduce sugar and carbs, mitochondria adapt by becoming more efficient at burning fat, which is a steadier and cleaner fuel. This shift strengthens their function and directly supports long-term vitality. Muscle mass itself is another central part of the strength-longevity connection. As we age, sarcopenia, the natural loss of muscle, becomes a major threat to independence and health. The problem is made worse when diets are high in sugar and refined carbs. Insulin resistance not only interferes with energy flow to muscles, but also suppresses protein synthesis. That means muscles aren't repaired or rebuilt efficiently after stress or exercise. Over years, this results in a slow but steady erosion of strength. And muscle is not just about moving weights or climbing stairs. It's metabolically active tissue that protects against obesity, stabilizes blood sugar, and reduces risk of falls and fractures later. In life, losing muscle accelerates the aging process, while preserving it extends both health span and lifespan. Another aspect often overlooked is how sugar contributes to systemic inflammation, which plays a role in nearly every chronic disease associated with aging. High blood sugar leads to glycation, a process where sugar molecules bind to proteins and fats, forming harmful compounds called advanced glycation end products. These molecules damage tissues, stiffen arteries, and impair collagen. The result is not just cosmetic aging of the skin, but functional aging of the muscles, joints, and blood vessels. Over time, this weakens performance, increases stiffness, and raises the risk of cardiovascular disease. By lowering sugar and carbs, we reduce glycation, inflammation, and oxidative stress, protecting tissues and keeping the body biologically younger for longer. Cognitive health is also tied to this discussion. The brain is a highly energy-demanding organ, and its decline is one of the most feared consequences of aging. Chronically high blood sugar damages the delicate blood vessels in the brain and promotes insulin resistance in neurons themselves. Some researchers even refer to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes because of this connection. What this means is that the same foods that weaken your muscles are also silently weakening your memory, your focus, and your mental sharpness. Maintaining a low-sugar, low-carb diet helps preserve insulin sensitivity in the brain, supporting mental clarity and reducing the risk of cognitive decline. A sharp mind and strong body are inseparable when it comes to true longevity. Energy stability ties everything together. When glucose is the body's primary fuel, energy is unstable. Highs and lows dominate, leaving people exhausted after meals or craving constant snacks. This instability not only undermines daily performance, but also signals the body to store fat rather than build strength. In contrast, when the body becomes fat, adapted through reduced sugar and carb intake, energy is steady and reliable. This allows for better physical performance, better endurance, and a reduced risk of frailty later in life. Ultimately, strength and longevity are not separate pursuits. They are two sides of the same coin, and both are directly shaped by the foods we consume. A diet low in sugar and refined carbs preserves mitochondrial health, supports muscle mass, reduces inflammation, protects the brain, and stabilizes energy. It keeps the body resilient, the mind sharp, and the spirit capable of living fully at every age. In this way, reducing sugar and carbs is not simply about losing weight or improving lab results. It's about ensuring that strength is not temporary and that health is not fragile, but that both can endure well into the later decades of life. When we decide to cut sugar and refined carbohydrates from our diet, the immediate question that arises is, what do we eat instead? This is where many people feel stuck, because sugar and carbs have become so normalized in daily meals that removing them feels like removing the foundation of the diet itself. But the truth is, strength and health are not built on sugar and processed carbs. They are built on nutrient-dense foods that provide steady energy, repair tissues, and protect the body from decline. Shifting to proteins, healthy fats, and fiber-rich vegetables not only fills the gap left behind, but actually creates a stronger, more resilient body. Protein is the first cornerstone of this shift. Unlike sugar, which creates volatility in blood glucose and insulin, protein provides stability. It supplies the amino acids the body needs to repair and build muscle, maintain skin, hair, and nails, and produce critical enzymes and hormones. For someone focused on maintaining strength, protein is non-negotiable. When sugar and carbs are reduced, the body can finally use protein more effectively, since insulin levels are no longer interfering with nutrient signaling. Protein-rich foods like fish, eggs, poultry, lean meats, and plant-based sources such as lentils and tofu become the tools for preserving and building muscle mass. This is the real shield against sarcopenia, the age-related loss of strength that undermines longevity. Healthy fats form the second cornerstone. For decades, fats were unfairly demonized, while sugar quietly became the dominant player in modern diets. But fats are not the enemy. They are essential for brain health, hormone balance, and cellular integrity. When carbs are reduced, fats become the body's primary fuel source, and they provide a cleaner, longer-lasting form of energy. Foods like avocados, olive oil, fatty fish, nuts, and seeds stabilize energy levels in a way sugar never can. They don't spike insulin, they don't create energy crashes, and they support metabolic flexibility. This means your body can switch between using glucose and fat with ease, a critical factor in sustaining energy throughout the day and preserving long-term health. Fiber-rich vegetables are the third piece of the puzzle. Many people mistakenly believe that a carb-free or low-carb diet means avoiding vegetables, but that's far from the truth. Leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, and colorful produce provide vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytonutrients that protect against disease and support recovery. Fiber, in particular, plays an essential role in stabilizing digestion and feeding the beneficial bacteria in the gut. A healthy gut microbiome contributes not only to nutrient absorption, but also to immune function and mental well-being. Vegetables also provide bulk and satiety, helping individuals stay satisfied without relying on processed carbs that trigger hunger cycles. This combination of protein, fats, and vegetables creates meals that are nutrient-dense, satisfying, and sustainable. They provide what the body actually needs rather than what it craves in moments of sugar-driven hunger. It's not about restriction, it's about substitution. Instead of toast in the morning, a protein-rich omelet with vegetables and avocado provides stable energy. Instead of pasta at night, a plate of grilled salmon with leafy greens and olive oil delivers satiety without inflammation. These choices not only prevent the blood sugar spikes and crashes that drain energy, but also feed the body with the building blocks for strength. Replacing sugar and refined carbs also breaks the cycle of dependency. As the body adapts to these nutrient-dense alternatives, cravings for sugar diminish. Energy becomes consistent, meals become more satisfying, and the emotional roller coaster of carb-driven hunger disappears. Over time, this creates freedom from food addiction and allows for a deeper connection between what you eat and how you feel. The body begins to respond positively, not only in how it performs but in how it heals and recovers. The long-term impact of these changes cannot be overstated. When you consistently fuel your body with nutrient-dense alternatives, you lower your risk for chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, and cognitive decline. You maintain the muscle and energy needed to stay active well into older age. And perhaps most importantly, you create a lifestyle that supports both strength and health without relying on temporary willpower or unsustainable restrictions. In the end, removing sugar and refined carbs is not about what you give up, it's about what you gain. By replacing them with protein, healthy fats, and fiber-rich vegetables, you build a foundation for strength, resilience, and longevity. This isn't a short-term fix. It's a long-term investment in your ability to live fully and powerfully at every stage of life. Making the decision to cut sugar and refined carbohydrates is one thing. Putting it into practice in daily life is another. This is where most people struggle, not because they don't understand the science, but because habits, cravings, and convenience often overpower knowledge. That's why practical strategies matter so much. A sugar and carb-free diet does not have to be rigid or complicated. It requires thoughtful planning, gradual changes, and a mindset that values long-term consistency over quick fixes. When applied in daily life, these strategies make the transition sustainable and ensure the benefits are lasting. The first practical step is to reduce carbs gradually rather than all at once. Many people make the mistake of cutting sugar and carbs overnight, only to feel deprived, fatigued, or overwhelmed. The body, especially if it has been running on carbs for decades, needs time to adapt to fat as its primary energy source. Starting by removing obvious sugars, sodas, desserts, pastries, creates immediate progress without creating shock. Once that becomes normal, moving on to bread, pasta, and processed snacks makes the journey smoother. This staged approach builds confidence and allows metabolism to adjust without excessive stress. Meal timing is another key element. Eating constantly throughout the day, especially when meals are carb-heavy, keeps insulin levels elevated and prevents fat burning. A simple strategy is to shift toward fewer, more satisfying meals built around protein, healthy fats, and vegetables. For example, a nutrient-dense breakfast with eggs, spinach, and avocado can eliminate the mid-morning crash caused by cereal or toast. Over time, many people find they naturally move toward 2 or 3 meals a day without the need for constant snacking. This not only reduces insulin spikes, but also gives the body space to tap into stored energy. Hydration plays a surprisingly important role. When carbs are reduced, insulin levels drop, and the body sheds excess water and electrolytes. If hydration isn't prioritized, this can lead to fatigue, headaches, or the so-called low-carb flu. Drinking enough water, along with replenishing electrolytes through mineral-rich foods like leafy greens, nuts, or even a pinch of sea salt in water, helps the body adapt more comfortably. Hydration also supports energy, digestion, and recovery, making it an essential daily practice in maintaining strength. Another practical strategy is preparation. The modern food environment is saturated with carb-heavy convenience foods. Without preparation, it's easy to fall back into old habits, especially when busy or stressed. Cooking in batches, having protein-rich snacks ready, and keeping healthy fats like nuts, cheese, or boiled eggs accessible makes it much easier to stay on track. Preparation reduces the need for willpower in moments of weakness and builds a safety net that supports long-term success. Social situations are often where people feel the most pressure. At restaurants, family gatherings, or work events, carb-heavy options usually dominate the table. A useful strategy is to focus on the protein and vegetables available while skipping or minimizing the breads, pastas, and sugary desserts. Most menus have steak, fish, chicken, or salads that can be ordered without sauces or dressings high in sugar. Learning to navigate these situations with confidence prevents setbacks and reinforces the lifestyle as normal rather than restrictive. Equally important is reframing the mindset around food. A sugar and carb-free diet is not about what you cannot have. It's about choosing foods that actually support energy and health. Instead of looking at bread or sweets as forbidden, see them for what they are: foods that drain energy, weaken metabolism, and accelerate aging. This shift turns discipline into freedom. Every choice becomes less about restriction and more about alignment with your long-term goals of strength and vitality. Finally, patience is critical. The body does not transform overnight. Energy stability, reduced cravings, and noticeable muscle preservation often take weeks or months to fully develop. The key is to trust the process and stay consistent. Over time, the benefits compound, energy becomes steady, recovery improves, and strength feels easier to maintain. This long-term payoff far outweighs the temporary discomfort of transition. In practice, sustaining a sugar and carb-free diet comes down to a series of simple, daily choices. Reduce carbs gradually, time meals wisely, stay hydrated, prepare ahead, navigate social settings with confidence, and keep the right mindset. These strategies transform the concept of going low-carb from a short-term diet into a long-term lifestyle. And it's that lifestyle, built on daily habits, that preserves strength, protects health, and creates a foundation for longevity. The real motivation for choosing a sugar and carb-free diet isn't just about what happens in the first few weeks or even the first few months. It's about the long-term payoff. When the body is consistently fueled by nutrient-dense foods and freed from the constant spikes and crashes of sugar, the benefits extend far beyond weight loss or better lab numbers. They begin to touch every part of life: physical performance, energy stability, cognitive function, disease resistance, and ultimately, the ability to maintain vitality well into older age. The long-term payoff is not measured only in years added to life, but in the quality of those years, the strength, clarity, and independence that make them worth living. One of the most immediate long-term benefits is stable energy. Without sugar and refined carbs driving constant highs and lows, the body learns to rely on fat as a primary energy source. Fat is a cleaner, more abundant fuel that the body can tap into without running out. This shift means no more mid-afternoon crashes, no more irritability when a meal is delayed, and no more reliance on constant snacks to function. Instead, energy becomes steady and predictable. Over years, this stability reduces stress on the nervous system and creates a foundation for consistent performance, whether at work, in the gym, or simply in daily life. Another profound payoff is the reduction in chronic disease risk. High sugar and refined carb intake is a well-documented contributor to conditions such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and certain cancers. By lowering blood sugar and insulin levels, the risk of developing these conditions is significantly reduced. But it's not only about avoiding disease, it's about keeping the body resilient. Lower inflammation, better insulin sensitivity, and improved blood vessel health all contribute to a body that can handle stress, recover from setbacks, and continue functioning at a high level for decades. The true payoff is not just a longer life, but a healthier one. Muscle preservation is another key element. Aging naturally brings some decline in muscle mass, but when combined with a high-carb lifestyle, that decline is accelerated. A sugar and carb-free diet helps preserve lean tissue by reducing insulin resistance and improving protein utilization. Over the years, this translates into greater strength, better mobility, and a lower risk of falls or frailty. Instead of facing the slow erosion of strength that so many associate with aging, individuals who prioritize nutrient-dense foods can maintain the ability to move, lift, and live independently far longer. Cognitive health also benefits enormously from the long-term shift. Chronically high blood sugar and insulin resistance impair brain function and are linked to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. By contrast, stable blood sugar and fat adaptation support mental clarity, focus, and memory. This means that the benefits of a low-carb lifestyle are not just physical, they extend to the mind. Decades from now, the ability to think clearly, process information, and stay mentally sharp will be one of the greatest payoffs of all. Even emotional well-being improves over the long term. Sugar-driven energy swings don't just affect the body, they affect mood, leading to irritability, anxiety, or even depressive symptoms. When energy stabilizes, mood stabilizes as well. Over time, this creates a more balanced emotional state, making it easier to handle stress and sustain motivation. It's not about willpower, it's about physiology working in your favor. The long-term payoff also shows up in resilience. A body fueled properly is less prone to illness, recovers faster from injuries, and adapts more effectively to change. Whether it's maintaining immune strength through winter seasons, bouncing back from physical strain, or adjusting to new challenges later in life, a sugar and carb-free diet builds a foundation of adaptability. This resilience is what allows people not just to live longer, but to continue engaging fully with life as they age. Finally, the biggest long-term payoff is freedom, the freedom that comes from no longer being chained to cravings, no longer living with unpredictable energy, and no longer fearing the slow decline that comes with poor nutrition. Freedom to travel, to play with grandchildren, to pursue hobbies, to stay active and engaged without being limited by fatigue or chronic disease. This is what health is ultimately about. Not the absence of illness, but the presence of strength, clarity, and vitality that lets you live the life you want. In the end, the long-term payoff of reducing sugar and refined carbs is nothing less than a transformation of aging itself. It turns the later decades of life from a period of decline into a continuation of strength and activity. It ensures that the energy you have today doesn't fade away, but becomes something you can carry forward year after year. And that is the true reward of life, not only longer, but stronger, sharper, and more resilient at every stage.